All right, welcome to the conversation. We got an interesting guest for you guys today. Peter Montalia is the author of The Second Civil War. Uh-oh, that sounds dangerous. Peter, welcome to the show.
Cenk, good seeing you, good to be here.
All right, so tell me what this book is about. What do you mean Second Civil War?
Our first Civil War was obviously a hot civil war where we had two different armies meeting on battlefields and killed 620,000 Americans. This second Civil War is a social civil war or a cold civil war, and it's being waged friend against friend, family member against family member, even employer versus employee, or oftentimes business against business, where people are shaming and shunning one another such that it's actually breaking down the social fabric of our country and hurting our ability to cooperate.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So I think the hard part is getting beyond it. So I'm hoping you have some answers there, but I will warn you that I'm going to come in very skeptical that we can fix it. But go ahead. Do you think there's hope for fixing it?
Well, let's put it this way. It's really on the individual level. So I was certainly inside the Second Civil War. I was part and parcel to it until I chose myself out. So when you ask yourself, what is the Second Civil War about? The first Civil War was the first Civil War was very, very clear. It was over slavery and federal versus state powers, very clear dividing lines. When you ask yourself, what is the Second Civil War about? The battlegrounds are not as clear. You could say it's about, well, we have two different versions of reality and we're arguing about what reality is. But in large part, it's just each side going, I can't live with the other side. The other side is insane and unreasonable, and we can't cooperate and move on. So those clear issues really aren't there. And yes, I know that there are different political issues, political dividing lines and things like that. But really, there's no singular issue like our first Civil War. So at any point in time, if you feel that you are in the Second Civil War, you can choose yourself out.
Yes and no. Okay, so on the one hand, I agree with you. I mean, we're fighting over Dr. Seuss books and transgender folks being able to go to which bathroom, and half the times the things that the Republicans passed, literally no one is doing. Like there's in most of the states that passed the laws saying that transgendered folks cannot compete on girls' athletic teams. They couldn't cite a single example of it actually happening in their states and breaking records and all that stuff. In Oklahoma, they passed anti-Sharia law as if the Muslims were on the verge of taking Tulsa, right? And so hence, I understand what you're saying, but there are people that it affects. That's demagoguery against transgender people, oftentimes against LGBTQ overall. It's demagoguery against Muslims, and let alone the giant ones against immigrants, blacks, and now back to anti-Semitism as well. So if you're in one of those groups, Peter, you got to say it's harder to quote unquote opt out.
So I'll make a distinction here. There's one where you are fighting against the other side. And there's a second thing about fighting for what you believe in. And so if you really believe that half of the country is evil and half the country wants to annihilate you, you really are bought into the Second Civil War. And you don't have to believe that in order to fight and advocate for the things that you believe in order to vote for the issues that matter most for you. That's the distinction I would make.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure I'm buying that. Okay, I'm keeping it real. Okay, but let's keep going. So on the lies and truth, that also matters, right? So, yeah, when we say that, okay, let's put it this. So Tucker Carlson says they're gonna come for you and they're gonna make you drink Starbucks every day if Joe Biden wins. That's a literal segment that he did. Now, is that true? No, of course it's not true. We don't care what you drink, let alone why would leftists want you to drink from a capitalist company like Starbucks? I mean, it's so nonsensical, but it scares people to death. But much more, that's a funny example, but there's non-funny examples like black people are gonna come to your door because you saw the protests that happened during George Floyd. They're going to come into the suburbs. They're a real threat to you, et cetera. Now that is really scary stuff, and it demagogues against black folks in this country in a way that is substantial. So when I look at it and I'm in the arena, I cannot let that stand. I can't volunteer out of that, whether I'm black or I'm not black. And there's things that are true and things that are not true. When we say they might do violence in order to support Trump, well, they did do violence on January 6th to support Trump. So now, if anyone on the left gets carried away and starts doing these fantastical ideas about how they're going to attack you that aren't true, then we would say, hey, wait a minute, that's not true. But 2 + 2 does equal 4. They are lying and we're not.
I understand. So the big challenge is finding the most effective way to change people's minds. And what I've learned, I'm gonna make some generalities here, by the way, and they can be nuanced if you say that's not true. But what I've really discovered in the last 10 years is facts don't change people's mind. Arguing with people about what reality is absolutely is by and large a non-starter, and all it does is add up divisions. So what I've discovered for me personally is the only thing that changes people's minds is relationships. And so the more that we attack the other side, not their ideas, but the other side, the more we make them feel that they are other from us, the greater the dividing lines and the harder it is to actually influence people. And the distinction I'll make, once again, is I think it's really good to fight for ideas. Fight for ideas all day long, but we have got to stop fighting, attacking other Americans.
But again, Peter, and I don't mean to be a downer, and you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to bring people together, and I appreciate it. And like I'm even a little worried that our brains are structured differently, right? So and I talk about this all the time. It's not that right wingers are evil. That's crazy talk. They're humans, right? And I even talk about how they're wonderful to many people. In fact, I was on a trip to Wyoming now, overwhelmingly Republican, and I showed my kids, look at how nice folks are, et cetera. They know that I do commentary on the left, et cetera. So, but unfortunately for conservatives, and you're right, the facts don't matter because it's emotional and they're kind of hardwired that way. They do have empathy and they are nice to people that are in their community. So whether it's their family, their church, their neighborhood, right? But they have a very clear circle the wagons mentality. Anyone who is the others is the bad guys, and I don't care what your damn facts say. I don't care about your facts. I'm afraid of the others. That's why the talk of dirty immigrants and marauding black Americans works, because that presses right down on their nerve of fear of the others. Whereas for progressives, we want to expand the circle of liberty, so we have an expansive definition of who we are. And we would even include Republicans in that. So we want them to have higher wages. We want them to have better health care. So you see how that creates a nearly unsolvable problem?
Nearly unsolvable. I think you're absolutely right. So I certainly have done enough research, as you have, to understand that how liberal minds versus conservative minds are wired differently. We have high O, which is open to new experiences. I really understand that. So what you're speaking to, I completely agree about and talk about in my book, is that we are highly tribalistic people. And given a choice of choosing something that is in our best interest or choosing something that keeps us in the good graces of our tribe, we will choose the thing that keeps us identified with our tribes. A zebra is more likely to change its stripes than a member of a tribe is, a political tribe is, to change an opinion. It's just really hard to do so, because in our ancient minds, we believe that going against our tribe equals death. It is hardwired into our very, very ancient brains. So whenever we try to attack them, it makes it worse for us. They pull farther away from us. And here's what I'll tell you, is that we cannot change what they do. We can't. All we can do is change what we do. We are the people of personal responsibility. And when we change how we behave toward them and we are more inclusive and we stop arguing with them and stop telling them they're wrong, they will be less likely to put up the barriers. I really firmly believe that if the Trumps on attack weren't so loud, if we hadn't gotten so loud with our attacks on President Trump, if we actually had said nothing, the conservatives actually would have probably done a better job of regulating him and drawing him in. But because we kept on amping up, going, how do you not see this? That they continued to be in greater and greater denial, protecting their leader, their symbolic leader, from any kind of attack. And that's why they were in such great denial. So we can't change them. All we can do is change ourselves.
So Peter, I'm gonna try to get the agreement at the end here, but I gotta disagree with that last part too. I mean, I was agreeing with you all the way until you got to maybe not so loud with Trump. And the reason is, bad faith actors put you in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. They spread lies, misinformation, attack you, and then if you don't attack back and you don't engage, people believe them because nobody ever said the opposite, right? And so people assume, well, they must be right because the other side didn't even say anything, right? If you engage and you attack back, oh, well, now you're attacking me and I hate you forever, and now I'm more dug into my position. So, and good faith actors don't put people in situations like that, bad faith actors do. And that's what Trump did, and that's what the Republican Party did. But okay, last thing on the optimistic note, maybe, Peter, what we could do is instead of focusing on the things where we disagree and need to fight, and I'm in the arena, and I'm gonna stay in the arena, I'm not gonna abandon the arena and let these monsters say the things that they say, okay? Because we gotta win over the middle, okay? So, and hence, clearly I'm not agreeing with you on part of it, I just call them monsters, okay? But on the other hand, what we could do is begin to focus on the things we do agree on. And the thing we agree on most of all is corruption. We think that the politics is broken and the media is broken. The only people who don't agree are the people in media and politics, okay? And they've partly driven the right wing crazy by constantly lying to them about wonderful, honorable politicians. And the right wing is right about that. And I'm happy to say they're right about that. And the left wing is right about that. So a point that you make, Peter, that I think really resonates is, if you're having troubles and you think the system is rigged, don't look down, look up, right? And they're trying to get us to fight one another. And when you focus on social issues, that works spectacularly. But if you focus on economic issues, we might actually be able to unite against the folks that are actually causing the trouble. Does that make sense?
I couldn't agree with you more. So even though we've had some disagreements here, I have a great deal of respect for you. You're a great intellect and a fantastic journalist. I would just reiterate, attack ideas and not people. And also I would say this, when you look at the polling on issues, both Gallup and Pew does very rigorous, very apolitical polling on a regular basis on things like gun rights, abortion, even abortion, believe it or not, a minimum wage. Usually there's between 60 and 80% agreement on policy issues of all Americans. Where we get into trouble is when we start arguing about sides. On issues we agree, it's when we start attacking each other and creating these different tribes that the fight gets so incredibly ferocious, and when we really retreat and kind of get insular into our tribes, trying to protect ourselves. Attack ideas, not people.
Yeah, look, I got a book coming up too called Justice is Coming, and the first chapter is all about exactly what you just said about the polls. Actually, the country is on the issues massively progressive, especially on economic issues. Even the Republican voters are progressive, they just don't know it because we split up into our tribes on social issues. And so, look, Peter Montalia wrote The Second Civil War, really interesting read, really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for getting in the ring with me and sparring some. I really enjoyed it. You're a great interviewer. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.